Hello, welcome to Learn Code and Create. Today is day 15 of our bootcamp. For the past 2 weeks, we have taken our time to explore HTML and CSS. We've learned that with HTML, we could structure our documents, what we call the web documents. So we could give them a structure on how to put together the content that has to be conveyed or displayed on the web documents. So we learned the various aspects of HTML. Then we learned that with HTML attributes, we could improve the features of some of the HTML tags. And at some point, we noticed that there is a limitation to that, and it could not allow us to give beauty to our HTML documents. So we bent on CSS to help us in styling. So in the second week, we took the whole week to go through CSS, various aspects of CSS. One, how do we put CSS and HTML together? And we learned that through that we have three main ways, although we have some other ways, but we learned that we have inlining, so which allows us to just bind our CSS to any HTML tag using the star attribute. Then we also learned that we can use the star tag to put HTML and CSS together, which we call embedding the CSS. And then after that, we also learned that we could have the CSS externalized in a different file, which will now bear the name of something or whatever the name is, .css. So here is an example. In our day 8, we did that. So the file was called stars.css. So later on, we can just use the link tag to bring it in. So like in this case, we could just say stars.css. So this week, we are going to focus on JavaScript. And before we begin, I would like to remind you to kindly consider subscribing to our channel, because our community right now is one of the fastest growing communities on YouTube. And I would really like you to join us and be part of this new community of new developers. So we are going to look at the JavaScript aspect in this week. So the first thing I would like to do is to find out how do we bring JavaScript together with HTML and CSS. So that's the point. The reason I'm starting with that is simple. We've seen that we have HTML. So let me write it in full. We learned that we have HTML, which was used in structuring our documents, right? So HTML, we use HTML to structure our documents. Then we use CSS as well to make our documents beautiful. And one question that always pops up when you have such things or such technologies collaborating is how to put them together, how to get them working together, right? So in the case of HTML and CSS, we learned that HTML can embed CSS. So HTML can embed CSS. So there are many ways to get HTML to include CSS. The other way around was not possible, right? So see this arrow as an inclusion. HTML could include in various ways CSS to get it working. So when it comes to JavaScript, what do we do? What is it? So this is the question we need to answer first. JavaScript. So when it comes to JavaScript, what is done? How do we get them to work together? Let's forget about what JavaScript is for now. Let's forget about what it is, what it looks like, and how to really use it. But the concern now is how do we put them together? So HTML, as interesting as it is, it has a way of connecting or including JavaScript in itself. So just like it has a tag for inserting CSS, one, it has an attribute. So here, this was done through attribute. So let me also write that. Attribute and tags. So HTML was doing this inclusion through attributes and tags. The dedicated tag. So HTML could do this inclusion. HTML could include CSS using attributes or an attribute, which is specifically the star attribute. Then it could include using a dedicated tag or the two dedicated tags, which are one, the star tag, opening star tag and closing star tag, and then the link tag. So when it comes to JavaScript, HTML also has these two options. HTML also has these two options, so which allows it to include JavaScript through attributes, not actually one attribute, but through attributes. And there are many that we can mention. But for now, I won't mention them. I'll put this empty bracket to show that yes, this gives us many options. Then it also has a dedicated tag for that purpose, and that tag, likewise, CSS is just script, because Java, as the name says, is a scripting language. JavaScript is a scripting language. So through the tag script, we can also embed JavaScript inside CSS. So the next thing I want you to know, just like in the case of CSS, our extension, every document in CSS is also ending with .css. .css. So we have .css. So let me make this like this. The same way JavaScript is also .js. .js. So it is very important that you note this. So now, so far, we have seen that one, HTML can include CSS, and JavaScript, and HTML can also include JavaScript. So that's one way of getting them connected. But JavaScript will not allow itself to be played that easily. So JavaScript also has a way of including HTML in itself. So this is where things become more interesting. So basically, you can have JavaScript inside HTML code, and the same way you are writing JavaScript code, you can have HTML code inside it. So these are two things that are very, very important to note right from the beginning. So now, once you understand this concept, let's talk about a topic that usually confuses new learners, and it makes your learning very tedious and complicated. When you are learning something and it looks so clouded and so complicated, it is very difficult to know where to start from, and you might lose hope, you might lose interest in learning it because of the size. But in reality, JavaScript in its core is not that large, it's not that huge, but the ecosystem, the environment, and so many things that emanate out of from JavaScript are the things that make JavaScript look big. So because of that, I want us to discuss the types, in quotes, of JavaScript. And the reason I'm categorizing this JavaScript in these types is because I'm considering two main aspects. One, the environment, which is where exactly do we run our JavaScript code? And second, the syntax, which is how we write it, right? So these are the things I want to consider. So, but considering the environment, so I will name this env. Considering the environment, we have two main environments in which, when it comes to web development, we run JavaScript. The first environment is the browser. So here comes our browser again. Remember, when we were learning HTML, we said that the browser was there to help us render and help us preview HTML. So here comes the browser again to help us run JavaScript, the way it runs HTML, the way it runs CSS. So the second environment, which is quite recent compared to when the web was created and when the browsers started, is Node.js. Node.js. And then in this same ecosystem of Node.js, we have another one called Dino, which is popping up. These two technologies are created by the same person, but in different times. We'll learn about them soon. We'll learn what exactly they mean. But for now, what I want you to understand that based on where JavaScript can be run, we have the browser environment. So it means you have a website built with HTML, CSS. You can also bring some JavaScript inside, and the browser will also run that JavaScript for you to see. And what we mean by run here is for the browser to be able to interpret your code and then come out with a result, a visible, tangible result, just like the way you saw your HTML was. Your HTML tags were popping up tangible results, which is using a heading actually transforms the text into a heading. And the same way using CSS by using color property, for example, it actually colors the property, the HTML elements. So the same way JavaScript can be run by the browser. The browser can interpret your JavaScript code and finally bring out the result you expect. So the next thing I would like to look at when it comes to the categorization I'm doing here is the syntax. So this is a large topic, and the word syntax here, understand it as the grammar for now. Syntax. So as in the grammar, which is the form in which we write JavaScript, the ways of writing JavaScript, how we put things together to write JavaScript. So in this category, we can have many. So it depends. We have the one we call the vanilla, which is the pure JavaScript. So vanilla. So vanilla JavaScript. Then you have other forms, such as when you are in Node.js, the syntax there might differ a little bit. So I will make it plus or others. So, right? Then if you are using a framework, for example, like React.js, the syntax there too might vary. If you are working with TypeScript, the syntax too might vary. So I don't want to write all these things because it might become the source of so many confusions. But I want you to understand that the writing of JavaScript in one area or one domain or one for some other reasons might change from one to the other. The environment in which we are can also affect what JavaScript we write, right? So these two things, I'm mentioning them because I want you to realize that it's not every JavaScript code you meet you must read, or you must assume that you don't know and you need to know. So our focus in this course is going to be the JavaScript on the browser, the JavaScript run by the browser. That's what we will focus on. And when it comes to the JavaScript in the browser, there are a few things we just said earlier on that JavaScript can include HTML and vice versa. So this process is what we call the manipulation. So manipulation. So let me use red, green. So manipulation. Manipulation. So understand me for this syntax. So JavaScript can actually manipulate HTML, and it manipulates the tags. And when we mean what we mean by manipulate is that it can create, so it can add more tags, it can reduce the tags, it can kind of merge them. So let's call that multiplication. It can divide them by combining different ways. So it's just a way of it's a way for me to just say that JavaScript can actually do a lot of manipulation on the HTML tags. And apart from that, JavaScript can also listen to behaviors we have on the web pages or on the HTML tags. For example, when you pass your mouse on an HTML tag, JavaScript can be able to detect that. Or when you click on a button, JavaScript can be able to detect that you actually clicked on something. And we call those ones events. We call those ones events. So JavaScript can help you manipulate or understand or listen to events. And apart from that, with JavaScript on your code or in your code, you can be able to make requests to a server directly. So you can make a background request to the server and say, oh server, we are on this page, we need this data, can you please fetch it from the database for us, and so on. So this is what we call networking. So JavaScript has this capability. So this will be our focus in this lesson. Learn JavaScript in the browser. Learn how JavaScript manipulates HTML tags. And in this context, we speak of the DOM, the set of this HTML tag that JavaScript can manipulate. We call it the DOM, which is document object model. The document, your web document actually, document object model. So that's what we'll be doing. So from time to time, you hear me use the term DOM. It is to say the HTML tags or the set of your HTML tags that make up your web page we are on, right? So you will see me mentioning the DOM. So this is with JavaScript. Like I said earlier, we are going to study in this course. Now we can go back and try to understand what JavaScript is. So what can JavaScript do for us? At this point, we have seen so far that it can be used to manipulate our document object model or to manipulate our HTML tags. We can use it to listen to events on our HTML document and so on, and also do network communications. So is that all? No, that's not all, but that's quite a lot, because you can spend your entire life exploring this universe of JavaScript, of DOM manipulation. There is a lot to learn inside that aspect of JavaScript, and there's a lot we can achieve. Most businesses or most applications you see there out there running with JavaScript are so complex. Take the example of your Gmail client, which is the interface you use to check your emails with Gmail. All this powered by JavaScript. You can imagine the complexity. So this can be very tense. This can be very intense to do. So it is not that simple as I'm saying it right now. Although, yes, I just love to make things simple. So it is simple. I don't want you to be confused, and I don't want you to be worried about learning too much JavaScript. It is actually a small language that can do so much, basically. So the learning curve can be simple and short, but what you can achieve is endless. So the other thing JavaScript can do for us is that JavaScript can be used as a thinking tool or a tool for thinking. And the reason I'm saying that is this: thinking, thinking. You see, the reason I'm saying that is because JavaScript has this functionality that allows it to solve problems. To solve problems. For example, let's assume we have 10 mangoes in our fridge, and then mom decides to visit us and then tells us that she's going to carry a few mangoes along and give it to us. We are okay with that. Then mom comes and then empties a luggage and then puts some mangoes in our fridge in addition to the mangoes we had. Then we go back, we check the mangoes, we count the mangoes, finally we realize we have 19. So we might ask ourselves this question: how many mangoes did mom bring? So this is a problem. This is a situation in which we might need a bit of calculations. So in mathematics, you would say, let's M be the mangoes, right? Mathematicians would think about this problem this way and say, let M be the mangoes. Initially, I had M, so initial value of M is 10, is 10, yes. We had 10 mangoes. Let me write this well. So initially we had M, which is equals to 10. Then the mangoes mom brought, let's call that X. Mathematicians love to use X. So X, we don't know X. But we know the final result, which is what we got in total. So let's call this T. And we know that the total is 19. So mathematicians will reason this way. And then finally, they'll have the equation of m plus x, m plus x, it gave us 19. So by solving this equation, we might end up having x to be 9. So mathematically, that's how you solve these problems. For me, one of the ways. The mathematicians in this room will tell me there are better ways of doing this maybe. We can do this same thing using JavaScript. And that's why I'm talking about solving problems with JavaScript. So in JavaScript, this m here we could say let m, so you see we say let m be the same equals to 10, right? And then we'll be like x is unknown, so we don't say anything, or we can just give it the value of anything which is empty, 0, so it's still m not n. Then t, we know, we'll say let t be equals to 19, and then we can say x is equals to 19 minus t. No, sorry. So we can say x is equals to, I think here I forgot the t. So we can say x is equals to t minus m. That will give us the value of x. And we can go ahead and display it and say, for example, alert. And so the thing is, at this point, you can see that this doesn't look like what we were doing with HTML and CSS. There is some logic here, and we can go on. So we can add a condition and say, for example, when mom came, mom ate a certain number of mangoes, and we're looking at the kernels we see on the ground, it's like she ate 2 or 3. So we can find out, okay, if mom ate 2 mangoes, how many mangoes do we have left? And if she ate 3, actually, or if she ate like 5, how many mangoes do we have left? So this is what we call thinking. So this thinking process, when a tool can support you in such thinking process, we say this tool becomes a modeling tool. So JavaScript also can be used for modeling problems. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because not only we manipulate the DOM element by simply adding or removing or bending or whatever manipulation we are going to make, it might happen that this manipulation doesn't simply happen. It has to happen under certain conditions or circumstances. For example, if you have a slide on your website or on the application you are building where people can slide products left and right, or right and left, you see, there are conditions. Are we going to slide left? Are we going to slide right? We need to find out in which direction we are doing the slide. And if we are to slide, at which speed should we slide? Is this every slide going to snap at the edge of the screen, or it can stop at the middle? You see, conditions and challenges start to happen, and that's what we call problems. So although I used a mathematical problem here, problems can rise when you are coding in JavaScript, or you are manipulating the DOM, or many other manipulations you do with JavaScript. So many problems can rise with different phases. But overall, your thinking process is what I am talking about here. The way you model these problems, JavaScript can also help you in modeling it, and consequently in solving these problems. So when you have a language that can help you do that, we speak of a programming language. So JavaScript is also a computer programming language. So computer programming language. Because we can also program other things, but we cannot use JavaScript, for example, to program them, right? Let's assume nature programs rains and dry seasons. We cannot use JavaScript to do that. So here we are specific to about what we are saying. So it is a computer programming language. So as a computer programming language, It means you have to learn a lot about the syntax, like I mentioned earlier, the grammar of the language, how to get it running, how to combine it with your various technologies, how to configure it on your PC, and so on. So on that note, it is time for us to actually go to go for the discovery of JavaScript. What is JavaScript? What does it look like? So we'll begin by applying the process of putting it together. So we'll come back to our case here where we put JavaScript and HTML together. So hey, wait, before we continue, I have an announcement. I have this little book I started working on. In fact, this whole bootcamp was inspired from the idea of that book. So if you are somebody who is interested in programming, the book is about introducing programming. So I entitled it Programming Explained the Way We Saw It. So it is a book that is going to detail you the basics, the core concepts from which programming actually was born, and that will make you a good programmer or a conscious programmer. So next time you are programming, you actually don't work in the mysteries. I prepared a Google form for it, so I'll leave the link below this video to allow you to leave me your email if you want to stay up to date in the progress of this book. So thank you, and let's continue our code. So let's begin. Let me close this document. We'll go back to our Lance course project folder, and then here I'm going to create a new folder, and I'll name this folder day 15. So inside this day 15, I'm going to create a new file as we usually do. But because I've been doing this routine for the past 2 weeks, I'm sure by now you would have understood how to make that. So I would like to show you a different way of doing it using my text editor. So in my case here, I'm using Sublime Text. If you are using Notepad, you are still using Notepad, you might not be able to do it. But I advise you today to go and download Sublime Text and or Visual Studio Code. So any of these advanced text editors, or if you want, you can go for Notepad++ or any other text editor so that you can level up now. You are allowed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this my folder in which I always have these subfolders, and I'll drag it over my text editor here, and my text editor will add it here. So here you can see my folder I just created, which is day 15, and there's nothing inside. So for me to create a new file now, I don't need to go inside the folder here and do right click, and so I can do it right from my text editor here by doing a right click on the folder name and click on new file. So by doing so, it gives me a new file and I can start writing my HTML code. So here I can save this file as, you see, as soon as I press save, it takes me directly to the location of the day 15 folder. So to tell me the file I'm creating is going to be saved inside that folder. So I'm creating a file called index.html. I'll put in some basic HTML and I'll give it the title of JavaScript. So once I have that, here we have our JavaScript, our HTML document. It is time for us to look at possibilities of combining HTML and JavaScript. So let me have a heading here as usual, and inside this header, I'll put in a heading 1 and say, welcome to my JavaScript powered website. Welcome to my JavaScript powered website. And here we'll put in a small paragraph with a lorem ipsum text, and I'll reduce this lorem ipsum text so that it doesn't look too cumbersome. We can be able to distinguish our code. So once I have that, I could try to add a button here to what we call a call to action button. So I'm going to say button, join us, or I could even make it a register. So if I go back to my folder to try to preview this document, I can double click on it, and this is what I get. So we can add some CSS, some Maggie of CSS to make it look beautiful. But for now, let's just stick to this so that we don't distract our minds with a lot around HTML or around our JavaScript. So let's stick to this document. I will zoom it in so that we have it clear. So here we are. What can we do with JavaScript here? Like I said earlier, HTML can include JavaScript and vice versa. And we said for HTML to include JavaScript, it uses attributes. So it is not only one attribute. And then we also have a dedicated tag script. I think in this case, the easiest to me is the dedicated tag script. And because the attributes are so many that if if it is not based on a case of need, you always go for all of them. So it is based on the need you have. There's a particular attribute for it. So let's start with the script. So for the script, which is the embedded JavaScript, so here I think I also forgot to mention that we can have external JavaScript. So that would have been obvious anyway. So we have external, and that one too also uses the script. So that being said, we have the three ways of bringing the JavaScript inside the HTML. So we said we'll go ahead and try the embedded option. So to do it, we just do it like we did with CSS. We come in the header, or it can be anywhere on your document, and we do script. But there is something strange with the JavaScript case. If we said JavaScript is also meant to manipulate HTML, if JavaScript is placed here before HTML actually brings in, or the browser decides to put in the tags on the browser, how is JavaScript going to find them if they don't exist? Remember, we were saying that the browser renders from the top down, left, right. So it means the browser will meet this line of JavaScript before it meets these tags. So it might happen that in our JavaScript code, whatever it is here, we say we decide to tell it to hide something or to delete something or a tag somewhere here. So at this point, it will not find that tag and it will be like, oh, this tag does not exist. And you might get an error from JavaScript telling you you are trying to remove something that does not exist because it hasn't seen it. The browser hasn't rendered it. So that's why it is good practice. It is advised, except in some special cases, it is advised that you put your JavaScript right before the last tag of your body. So that's before the closing body tag. You should bring your JavaScript code in here. So be it by embedding or by external JavaScript, you should bring it here. So that's one cool way of doing it. So once we have the JavaScript, the script tag inserted here, what exactly do we write here? What do we write here? So that's where things become interesting. JavaScript as a programming language does not only allow you to think like we said here, but if you look at this thinking process, you can see that we use a certain things, certain keywords. So for example, the keyword we have here, which is let, another let here. We also have the equals to sign, which is what we call the assignment sign. Mathematically, we also have it here. We have the values, which is the numbers we use, and so on. Then there's this thing here that is like a word with brackets, and that's what we call functions. So this is a function. So this is a function. These are what we call keywords. Keywords. These are what we call operators. Let me change the value for this. So operators. So these are operators. So these are operators just like we use in our arithmetic operations. And these are values. Okay, there's a lot to say in terms of this value here. So these are values. So the JavaScript language as it is a set of keywords, operators, values, functions, and so many other elements that we call the objects. So for now, we wouldn't go that area. What we are interested in this particular lesson is the keywords and the operators. So that being said, if we are to try to replicate this we had here, what are we going to get? So let me write it down entirely. So I'm going to have let m equals to 10, like we said. Then I'll go ahead and say, oh, I think we had this here. This shouldn't be m, so this is n, right? So we said m is the number of mangoes and n equals to 0. That's what we had initially. Okay, then let t, what the total be this. I think I mixed up my maths here. So we said m the number of mangoes. So m be the number of mangoes. So initially m was 0. So I think I didn't need to bring n equals to 0 here, because we're actually talking about m. So we set the initial value already to 10. So m be this, and then t is this, and then mom brought x, and that's all. So my bad on this, please. So we go ahead, we have m equals to 10, and then let t, which is the total, be equals to 19. Then we can go ahead and solve for x. So we also say let x be something. So x is by default nothing until we decide to say x will take the value of t minus m. So the total mangoes brought by the total mangoes we have in the fridge minus the mangoes we had will give us the number of mangoes mom brought. Mom's. And this is ours. So this is the total in the fridge. So brought this. So mom brought this. Let's add that. Mom brought this. Okay, so mom brought this, and we said we use alert. That's the function we said. So we said this is a function. So we use that function, and then in its bracket we put x. So by doing that, let's go and refresh our browser and see. Wow, something happened. It actually pops up the word 9, the number 9. So this is why we say JavaScript can also help us in thinking, because it also can solve mathematical problems. It can solve mathematical problems. So that is what we actually call JavaScript language, or programming in JavaScript. It's the combination of these keywords, variables, operators, and so on. And by what we just did here, which is creating this term, using this word, and then giving something to it. This word here, we call it variables. So let me use this. So this is called a variable, or variable, depending on where you stand. Variable. So in our code, for example, we have a variable m, another variable t, another variable x. We'll come back on this aspect deeper as we continue to learn in this lesson. So variables basically are just names used to reference values. So you can see that, so except here, I have this variable with its background. So yes. So basically, in the computer memory, we are asking the computer in its memories like this to keep a place and put the number 10. So that's, I'm talking about this line here, to put a number 10 inside. So, but at the end, we want to give a name to that area. So let me retain like this and use green. So for that space that the computer memory gave us, we want to give it a name so that we can easily remember that name. So anytime we tell the computer, oh, m, give us m, so it means we are asking it to give us the value that exists in that area it reserved for us to keep the number 10, or the value of 10. So that's what variables are all about. So see variables as references to values. See variables as references to values. So if we say we are declaring a variable x, and then we don't give it anything, so we don't do this, it means we did not link it to any particular value in the memory. We did not reference any particular value through that variable. So that's it about variables here. So also, if we look at it, if we had to change, let's say, the value of 10 into, let's say, if we're dealing with some other things. So here in our case, we are dealing with mangoes. So it might even happen that the mangoes we had, we ate one and we cut half of it. So maybe we had 10 mangoes and half of the mangoes. That would have been 10.5. So if we are to operate, we can now see that the result is 8.5 instead. So you can see the value can be simply a plain. So it means the values here can be of different types, just like in mathematics. In math, we have what we call the number groups or number sets. So we have integers, real numbers, complex numbers, and so. So because we group these numbers based on their behavior and their nature. The same thing in JavaScript, we can also group values we assign or we are manipulating based on their types and their behavior. So we'll continue by exploring these types in next lessons. So basically, you can have what we call integers, real numbers, you have strings, and so on. So these are the various grouping of content or variables we can have when manipulating or when working with JavaScript. So what I want you to remember here is that one, JavaScript is here to help you manipulate HTML and CSS. And JavaScript is there to help you think, to help you reason. And it is a programming language, so it comes with its way of being written, which we call the syntax. So throughout this lesson, we are going to use all these possibilities. We are going to use it to think. We are going to use it to model our problems. We are going to use it to manipulate the browser DOM or to manipulate the HTML tags. We are also going to use it to solve our problems by writing mathematical operations necessary to come up with values or solutions. So in this case, we can also see another type of things which we call here the equal sign, what we call in this the operator. It's not only the equal sign that is the operator, the plus, the minus, they are all operators. And here it shouldn't be plus, it should be minus. So if you have spotted this error, if you have spotted this mistake as well, kindly leave your comment and say I have seen it so that I know that you are a math guru. So we go ahead, we'll replace this with a minus. Let me make it this visible. So that's t minus m. So and we said that JavaScript can, so part of the things we can do with JavaScript and manipulating the DOM, we have just seen the part where it can do operations, it can be used as thinking thing. So now let's see how we can use it to manipulate the DOM. So I don't want you to definitely memorize what I'm going to write, but just see it as a way of doing it. So these are ways of doing it. We'll continue learning these things very soon. So we just learned that we can declare a variable, which is something that can reference to a certain value. So let me declare a variable and I'll call it, for example, document body. I will not link it to any particular memory area, or I will not link it to any particular value for now. And I'm now going to create that value. So I'm going to say document body. I will now link it to a value. What value do I want? What value do I want to link to it? I want to link to it. I want it to pick the document body tag. So the body tag we have here, I want it to pick it and then put it in memory and reference it through this document body, actually to give it the name of this document body. So like in my drawing here, what I want to do is I want the computer to take the document body tag and put it inside, and then change the name here instead of M and make it document body, like the way I declared it. Change the name into document body. So I am saying document body, link it to document.query selector. We give it a tag of body. So these are things we will learn over time, what they are used for while we do it. When we go to the actual DOM manipulation in tomorrow's lesson, we'll see what these things mean and what it is. So once I have that, I can go ahead and say inner text is equals to hello world. So by doing that, let's go and refresh our document and see what happens with this JavaScript code. Of course, I have this one. So you can see this alert thing happens first. So I will kind of disable it. This is what we call comment it out. So I'll kind of disable it temporarily and then allow this to run. So once it runs, what happens? Our content is replaced with what JavaScript wanted to do. So basically, so we said JavaScript, go and find the body tag. So notice here, we did not use the less than and greater than signs. We didn't use less than and greater than signs to show the tag. We only use the tag's name. So go grab that tag, then insert some text between the tag, that's within the tag. And the text is this. And since our body tag is the parent tag that contains everything we had, including this whole script itself, so it will go in, grab the tag, clear everything it had inside, and then put the text we asked it to put, which is the hello world. And that's one example of we manipulating the DOM. So if we go now and inspect, let's even display the source code, you can now see that we still have our content as we wrote it in the HTML and JavaScript there. You wouldn't have believed me that JavaScript is actually going to wipe itself. How is it going to write itself? So, but how is it able to write this on the page if we still have the code? How is it going to do that? So this actually happens momentarily. This happens very quickly and shortly. So JavaScript does this very swiftly, right? So it is temporal. What we have here is a temporal value, and we'll go and explore these possibilities as we are into this lesson. We wanted to show various way of getting JavaScript. So here I showed, which is the embedded. How do we bring it using the attribute? Because I mentioned the dynamic aspect here, I wanted to really make that. I would have actually forgotten this, but let's do it. So one good attribute we usually use is on click. And you can see here, all these things you see that start with on are JavaScript attributes to bring JavaScript in. So in our case here, we want to listen to the click. So when the user clicks on this button, what happens? So we'll write some JavaScript. We already know a JavaScript function called alert, which pops up something. So if we do this and we put whatever it should pop up, and that will be it. Or we'll just say clicked a button. So this is a way of actually inlining JavaScript with HTML. So we are inlining this JavaScript using one of the attributes. Like we said, it has many attributes. Using one of the attributes, which is on click, to do alert, which is we call this function. So if I reload, oh yes, because we have this class here, this block of code here that removes everything from the body, including our button, we won't get it. So we go ahead, then we now have a button. If I click on the button, you can see clicked on a button. So before we go to the end, before we end this lesson, I would also like to underline something that is called the console. So the browser having the power to interpret JavaScript, that power actually is achieved through something we call the JavaScript engine. And that's what actually makes the various environment we are talking about. So the engine is actually, the engine is the code that knows how to interpret JavaScript code. So in any browser, there's a JavaScript engine, and the engine can vary from one type of browser to the other type of browser, but they all try their best to implement the JavaScript language the same way. So actually, when we write JavaScript code or JavaScript files and we link it to our HTML code, we are actually telling the JavaScript engine to go in and pick these JavaScript portions of the code and run them for us. So that engine, there is a way you can communicate with it. One way was for we to write the JavaScript code in HTML tags, in HTML, or write the JavaScript code in JavaScript files and link these files to the HTML. And once they are linked to the HTML, they will be actually touched by the JavaScript engine. The JavaScript will see them and go ahead and then execute it. So another way for us to do it, which is mainly for testing and debugging or checking things, is to interact with a tool called the console on browsers. So when you go on browsers and you right click on any place and you do inspect, it will open up this kind of interface, and right on top here at the right my right side here, you can see something called console. So the console is something used like an interface between you and then the JavaScript engine. So you can actually send your JavaScript code to the engine directly through this console. So for example, if I say let m equals to 10, you will see. So it says identifier m has already been declared. So you see, the engine was touched through this and it realized, oh yeah, you declared these variables already inside this document because we have them here through the embedded JavaScript we wrote. So if I change the name into something, let's say let v is equals to 20, now it says yes, we have the v. So if I just write v like this, you see, it returns the value v as and brings me an arrow to tell me it is a returned value. It's a response from the engine itself. So this can be very handy sometimes when we want to actually try some few things on our JavaScript, or even write complex JavaScript programs through it to test what we are doing, to test our ideas and so on. People even go ahead to teach you the whole JavaScript programming just using this console. But I prefer a more realistic aspect which allows us to connect HTML documents to our code like we would do in reality. So this will bring us to the end of this lesson. So throughout this course, throughout this week, we will be combining the DOM manipulation from JavaScript, the thinking aspect of JavaScript as our programming language, and to create applications, to create dynamic web applications. So if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please kindly subscribe right now, like our videos, share them with other people, and because more courses are coming ahead, if you really always wanted to learn JavaScript the simplest way, the easiest way, this is an opportunity, and keep on watching our videos and share it with many other people around you to also share this opportunity with them, to also let them benefit from this opportunity. Thank you so much and see you in tomorrow's lesson.